So, front page of the New York Times, you have Gina Haspel, CIA director, after a briefing. And senators coming out of that briefing saying the Saudi prince was complicit in the murder.
And they're
after
furious.
briefing by the CIA, and they are furious. And if you look at Gina Haspel, this is a woman who, I think like Rod Rosenstein before, you don't want to twist their words.
No.
Trump got in trouble with Rosenstein early on by blaming the firing of Comey on Rosenstein. Here, he lied about what Gina Haspel and the CIA had told him, mischaracterized it. Gina Haspel went to the Hill, set the record straight.
So it was a closed-door meeting with select senators, and Gina Haspel yesterday spoke to them about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The CIA has recently given a high-confidence assessment that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered Khashoggi's murder. It follows last week's all-senators briefing by Secretaries Mike Pompeo and Jim Mattis, where lawmakers were angry that Haspel was not included. Senator Dick Durbin suggested her absence was because the White House blocked her participation. This was what Pompeo and Mattis said last week after the briefing without Haspel.
There is no direct reporting connecting the Crown Prince to the order to murder Jamal Khashoggi.
We have no smoking gun that the Crown Prince was involved.
All right, so then take a look at this reaction.
Let's talk about that for a second.
It was painful.
Hold on, they're both lying.
I mean, no,
they're both lying. Willie, maybe they think they're using terms of art. I think Pompeo was especially dreadful there. By being actually emphatic about the lie that he knows, and this is what gets me in Trump's America. He knows he's lying. We know he's lying. The world knows he's lying, and yet he will still go out. Here's a relatively young man with great credentials, a great past behind him, who is going out and sullying his reputation for a man who may not be in the White House for another year. It's just, it's shocking to me.
And for what specifically, I would ask Secretary Pompeo and Secretary Mattis as well, because that's not a lie that they repeated after that. That was not a one-off. That was the line. That
was it not their purview, or was it a lie?
To protect who exactly? To protect the president, to protect Khashoggi, and then why does President Trump want to, excuse me, not Khashoggi, MBS, and why does the president want to protect the Crown Prince in this case? Why is that so important to him? Look, these senators came out of that meeting yesterday emphatically. Having heard Gina Haspel's testimony and having heard the intelligence, here's what they said after the briefing yesterday.
You know, Joe, there's not a smoking gun, there's a smoking saw. You have to be willfully blind not to come to the conclusion that this was orchestrated and organized by people under the command of MBS, and that he was intricately involved in the demise of Mr. Khashoggi. It is zero chance, zero, that this happened in such an organized fashion without the Crown Prince. I would really question somebody's judgment if they couldn't figure this out.
I have zero question in my mind that the Crown Prince, MBS, ordered the killing, monitored the killing, knew exactly what was happening, planned it in advance. If he was in front of a jury, he would be convicted in 30 minutes guilty. And there's no way that anybody with a straight face could say there's any question about what has happened.
Senator Corker added the difference between last week's administration briefing and the Haspel briefing was the, quote, difference between darkness and sunshine. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who also attended yesterday's briefing, is calling for a full Senate briefing from the CIA director. The House will be briefed next Thursday by Secretaries Pompeo and Mattis on Yemen and Saudi Arabia, similar to the Senate's briefing last week. Director Haspel is not scheduled to attend that one. David Ignatius, I mean, what are Pompeo and Mattis up to here? Are they just running interference for the president? And why is the president running interference for the Crown Prince?
Of course, it's a woman who has to step up.
I read the Pompeo-Mattis statements as policy statements. It's awkward and inconvenient for Saudi Arabia, our ally, to be in this kind of trouble. And I read Gina Haspel, from what we know, as a statement of the truth. The CIA has that motto out in Langley that you shall know the truth and the truth will make you free. And Gina Haspel had a good day yesterday, telling all those senators the truth as the CIA knows it. Not about policy, not about what to do about it. Just here's what happened, and wow, what impact.
So the shocking thing about this, to me and to others, I believe, is when Jim Mattis says there's no smoking gun. When both men, Secretary Pompeo and Secretary Mattis, know what the CIA provides. They provide an assessment. It's not a homicide investigation per se, where they say David Ignatius committed the crime. They provide, talk about what the CIA provides.
So what the CIA provided was detailed evidence, as I understand it, of the conversations that Mohammed bin Salman had with his key lieutenant, a man named Saud al-Qahtani, about what was taking place in Istanbul, and also conversations from Istanbul to Riyadh, filling Riyadh in on what was going on, what had happened. And the key thing is that the senators wouldn't just accept the kind of, well, there's no smoking gun, we don't know, we'll see, the policy whitewash of this. Senators like Lindsey Graham said, we want Gina Haspel, the CIA director, here. It was a day when Gina Haspel became CIA director for real.
For real. And by the way, score one for Lindsey Graham.
Yep.
It's a bit like tennis. You're not sure what side the ball is going to be on, but there are days where you're actually very glad that Lindsey Graham remembers what he and John McCain did together. Yesterday was one of those days. Now, today, who knows?
No.
But, you know.
He actually referenced McCain yesterday.
Oh, my
Lindsey
God.
Graham,
Can you
in his
imagine
statement, he says, John McCain, we're standing here right now. Here's what he'd be saying.
So, talking about the State Department, talking about Mattis and policy versus Gina Haspel and the CIA, interested in the truth, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It reminds me what the great General Michael Hayden says, which is, you can look and see who Donald Trump has gone to war against. It's the intel communities. It's the Justice Department. It's the courts. It's the media. It's the academy. It's the sciences. Fact finders. People whose entire existence is based on digging for the truth and letting Americans know what that truth is. And we saw that yesterday with Gina Haspel at the CIA. I know that General Hayden had to be so proud of her.
Absolutely. Yesterday was a day when you saw the truth will out and the power of it. Once those senators had heard it, listen to what they said. There's zero question of what MBS did. That he's complicit in murder. There's still a question of what the United States does about it. Saudi Arabia is bigger than one person, and there's a real. Should we send a delegation to see the king?
Listen, I know we got to go. To the next block, but let me just ask you really quickly. How much oil do we get from Saudi Arabia, and how much oil do we get from Canada? There is such a gross misunderstanding of that among the American people.
We don't need Saudi Arabia's oil in the way that we did when we were growing up. We used to be terrified that we'd lose that. That said, Joe, it's important that we not have another failed state in the Middle East. So somehow we need, I think, to deal with this in a way that helps Saudi Arabia become more stable, not less so.
Do the Saudis understand post-Trump that there will be no dealing with MBS?
They put so many chips on the little square that said Donald Trump. Obviously, they didn't understand that, but they better understand it now.
Okay.
Thank you, Joyce Vance.
Well, let's ask Joyce. Joyce, what are we going to hear on Friday or before Friday?
Oh, we got the Manafort sentencing.
When it's time to sentence Paul Manafort.
We don't know how much detail we'll get, but Mueller has, I think, been rewarding us for our patience by dropping new details as he files in court. We'll learn what it is that special counsel believes Manafort lied about that was so significant that it blew his plea agreement out of the water. this has to be something significant because prosecutors will try to work with witnesses. It's not uncommon for cooperators to engage in progressive truth-telling. It causes prosecutors a little bit of heartburn because you have to disclose everything that they lie about to the other side in litigation, but you can save them. But here, whatever Manafort did was so tremendous that it was a deal breaker, and knowing those details in and of itself may help us understand where Mueller is headed.
All right. Joyce, thank you so much.
Joyce, roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
What a game
All that
on
stuff.
Saturday. My
Okay.
Lord.
Oh, yeah. Apparently you were watching it. Okay, so one last story for this block. Forbes is out with its list of the world's 100 most powerful women. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is in the top spot, followed by the British Prime Minister Theresa May, IMF Director Christine Lagarde, and GM's Chief Executive Mary Barra.
Wow, what a list.
And look
That
who's
is a
also
list.
on this impressive list. Vice Chairman of Bank of America, Anne Finucane. She's ranked number 8 in global finance, 42nd overall. Former Secretary of State John Kerry posted a note on Twitter congratulating Anne, calling her a leader on climate change who is savvy and creative and an incredible friend. I would second that. He added, quote, she earned this and more. And I was trying to talk to Anne. We were texting on flights. Where was she going? Between France and somewhere. Brussels. Okay. And
She
I was
quelled
trying to
the
get a
riots
quote.
in France.
I interviewed
then she went
her.
to Brussels.
She's been a friend for a long time. You used to make fun of me for being scared of her. Here's
You
my
still
trajectory
are.
with that. I'm not.
Oh, really?
I have realized that Anne,
I'm
and this
scared
is the
of her.
key to her success, she's calm, she's clear, she's confident. And if you are not that, you will be nervous around her, but now I'm not. She's incredible and a true loyal friend, and she married an amazing man.
Really?
Really?
Me?
Yes. Everyone
thank
likes
you.
to hit you and make fun of you, Mike,
What
but
are
the truth
what are the
is...
odds are that I can get a boost in my
Your paycheck?
my allowance?
Allowance.
Can I just say,
I'll
Mike,
check for you.
the seats that you have
Yeah.
right next to the Red
We'll
Sox
let you know.
dugout that look up at the Green Monster, that's allowance.
I'll
There
settle
you
for
go.
that.
Right.
I'll settle for
Yeah,
that.
One point of
congratulations,
reference.
Anne.
Yes.
Anne Finucane 42, Beyonce 50.
Exactly.
That's all.
Yeah.
Well, and also,
And who were
again,
the 41?
think about
I mean,
it
come on.
seriously. Number 8
Yeah.
in global finance. It's extraordinary and speaks volumes to what she has done, what she did at U.S. Trust, what she's doing at Bank of America, just being one of the most
It's a global
influential-
powerhouse.
Yeah. You remember back during the
No, come on.
during the global
We
crisis?
did so well.
We had to, every time Barnacle talked, we had to, had to put up the disclaimer, wife works for Bank of America.
No.
Wife runs Bank of America. Doesn't run it. but
Wife
she's
runs
great.
the world. All right,
Exactly.
still ahead on Morning Joe. President Trump
Congratulations,
uses
Ann.
the Paris protests to falsely claim that the French president agrees with him on climate change.
My God.
What's his problem?
What do you
We're
what's
gonna
his
get-
problem?
I mean, it's just.
What do you mean, what's
I'm just
his
going to be
problem?
quiet. Don't. All right.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.